Hello everyone, I hope you all guys are all well today. Welcome back to another episode, and as usual, find me on Facebook, YouTube one way, and on BitChute. But ladies and gentlemen, please be aware, BitChute and so on and so forth are highly unreliable. Therefore, if you want the most up-to-date stuff, always go through to YouTube or Facebook, or even one way, because I can always link my stuff there. But because, for example, on BitChute, I've had a video up there for like 2 days now, under process and publish, and it just stays there and hangs. So anyway, but ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to be talking to you about doubt versus faith. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I was engaged in a delightful conversation. I watched this one video on a channel called Unbelievable, and I left a remark of sorts, and then some atheist decided that he'd have a go with me and stuff like that. But the gist of his argument, basically at the end, was that doubt is a virtue, right? And not only is and since in his view, doubt is a virtue, that doubt should actually be rewarded. Okay, this was his way of thinking, and this is something I see a lot, actually, surprisingly. Now, and this is always set up in contrast to faith. So you always basically have doubt versus faith, right? And the atheist position has got to the point where they basically say that doubt must be uplifted, right, and faith must be diminished, and that faith is in fact destructive, it's pernicious, it's problematic. And you actually see this a lot now. And one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because literally yesterday I saw a video in which a gentleman by the name of Neil deGrasse Tyson basically said that faith is believing without evidence. Now, at this point, by 2019, atheists have been informed so regularly about what faith actually means that by now that by now, if they haven't got it, it's just they're being asinine. Basically, is what the problem is. They're being willing ignorant, or they're just stupid. There's something wrong with them. But this idea that faith is what is the fallback, right? So that faith, right, and so evidence. So faith is what happens. Right. So I don't have that. So evidence, whoops, spelling mistake. Right, let's go back. Right, so when you don't have evidence, then you have faith. Okay, when there's no evidence. This is their assertion. So faith is a fallback mechanism when you don't have evidence. Now, the actual definition of faith. The actual definition of faith is trust, right? In the old Latin languages and stuff like that, it's literally fides, right? Confidence in, trust and stuff like that. So by saying I have faith in God, I'm literally saying that I trust God. It's the same thing. If I say to my mate, I trust you, I'm literally saying the same thing as if I said I have faith in you. It's literally the same thing. Right? Now, how does faith arise? How does faith actually arise? Because this is always the argument, right? Because it's this dichotomy. They say, well, we need to uphold doubt, squash faith. Okay? So faith, when you trust something, how does trust come about? Right? Trust comes about because of experience, right? Because of what you know. Okay? So faith equals trust. And both of them are based on knowledge. Are based on knowledge, right? You gain this by according to what you know, right? According to what you know, and not only knowledge, but experience. That is how you gain faith in something, right? So, for example, right? So that's actually all one thing, right? Faith literally means trust, knowledge, and you gain faith and trust from either knowledge or experience. So for example, your first time skydiving, right? What's going to happen? You're going to doubt, because no matter what you know about the parachute and this and this and that, it's a problem, right? You're fearful, whatever. After you've done it ad nauseum, you eventually lose the fear and all that kind of stuff. It's not because you suddenly stop being fearful, but it's because you learn to trust, right? Through experience and through the knowledge that you've gained of how everything works, and through the experience and stuff, you eventually gain a trust, a faith that the parachute will open, etc., right? Now, do accidents still happen? Absolutely. Accidents still happen. Conclusive evidence that accidents still happen during skydiving, people, but based on your knowledge that in the vast majority of cases, right, you can have faith that when you go doing it, that it's going to work and you're not going to die. That is, faith is based on a knowledge and an experience of something. It's the same thing with people, right? Based on a knowledge of who the person is and an experience of what they are like. And the more knowledge and the more experience, the more faith you have, the more faith and or trust you have in a particular person. And that goes for anything in life, whether it's a piece of machinery, and so on and so forth. Even in your own self, in your own abilities. Now, so where does doubt fit in? Okay, when does doubt happen? So naturally, doubt is then something that happens in the absence of sufficient knowledge. It's literally the opposite of what atheists are claiming, right? So doubt, right, when you doubt, before I get there, they often equivocate on the words doubt and skepticism. They think that these are equal, right? But they're not. They are absolutely not the same things, first of all, right? Skepticism is actually a higher brain function, right? Skepticism is something that happens in the frontal lobe. Right? Skepticism is a higher brain function. Why? Because skepticism is what occurs when you come into information and that information conflicts with pre-existing knowledge. Knowledge or experience. Okay? So skepticism is a higher order brain function, and skepticism is what happens when the information that's coming in conflicts with knowledge and with prior knowledge and experience that you already have. Therefore, right, skepticism is precisely what occurs when something contradicts your faith. Your faith in a particular thing. Because why? The reason why humans have to have faith is because we are not omniscient. We do not know everything. Therefore, every single thing we know is contingent. And because it's contingent, we ultimately have to say, we have to arrest our skepticism and say, right, I'm now no longer skeptical. I now have as much information as I can garner. And therefore, in order for me to continue moving forward in the world, I have to accept that this is the best truth I have right now. Okay? Therefore, you have faith in that this is as good and as accurate as possible for you to then move forward in your life. So skepticism is something that naturally happens. It's a higher order brain function because it has to do with what's coming in. You're assessing what's coming in, right? Because if the frontal lobe is not working, if your higher order brain functions are not working, then what's coming in simply goes in. You simply accept whatever you're told. Okay, which is what atheists do when they listen to idiots like Neil deGrasse Tyson say that faith is, try to redefine what faith is, and you get people like Aaron Ra and those other idiots as well that no matter how often they're told, no matter how much they're shown that for the past 2,000 plus years of human existence, that human beings have always of how the word faith has been used, they absolutely refuse. They remain utterly recalcitrant and obnoxious to boot, and they continue, right? And then all of their little minion brainless ones simply accept what they are saying, right? So they lack skepticism, right? And the reason why they lack skepticism, right, is because there is no knowledge or experience. Right, therefore, there's no frontal lobe engagement. They simply, I simply accept. Right, there's no frontal lobe engagement. A true atheist, when encountered with that, will go and actually look up the definition properly, and not only that, but see how different cultures have used it throughout history, and then at that point, okay, there it's actually not true, right, and where you gain this. Now, right, so this is a higher order function, and ultimately you require faith, because faith is necessary, because human knowledge is contingent and limited. We can never know absolutely everything. Okay, so that's faith or trust. Trust, right? So faith, right? Faith and or trust is based on your knowledge and your experience of a particular thing, right? And the information and all the particulars surround it, to the point where you can have sufficient enough confidence to hold that particular thing as true and accurate. And then based on that, you will then move forward in life in faith. Yeah? Okay. Now, where does doubt come in? Doubt, all right, unlike skepticism, right? Unlike skepticism, doubt is a lower order function of the brain, right? Doubt is an emotion. Okay? Doubt is an emotion. You begin to doubt yourself, for example. When you doubt your abilities, what happens? It's an emotional thing. It's an emotional experience, right? Doubt is what happens, first of all, it's a lower brain function. It's part of the amygdala of the brain, right? When whatever is happening in the amygdala overrides the frontal lobe. So things like doubt, things like fear and anxiety, all of these things come from the same place. So by saying, and so technically speaking, right, if you say that doubt is a virtue, by saying that doubt is a virtue, you might is equivalent to saying that cowardice is a virtue. It's the exact same thing. Right? Because faith, in a sense, is like bravery. Because bravery, I am brave, and even though I know there's a chance that I could be defeated, I have sufficient confidence in whatever that I will prevail in the face of overwhelming opposition. Right? It's the same thing with faith. I have sufficient confidence to know that despite my fear or my doubt or whatever I'm feeling, right, that I will persevere because I have sufficient reason to believe that what I'm doing or thinking or believing is correct, right? So by elevating doubt as to the point of something that's virtuous is literally the same as elevating something like cowardice or sentimentalism as a virtue. Right? This is the kind of philosophical stupidity that is now become common within the atheist community, right? Because they necessarily need to start screwing around with these ideas in order to make their things pass, which is why they necessarily need to redefine For atheists to maintain their position, their anti-Christian position, they necessarily need to redefine the word faith, because if they actually took on board what it means, then one of their strongest arguments that Christians just accept blindly and on wholesale and stuff like that, and that's what the religion requires. Because what does the Bible say? The Bible says that the only way to please God is by having faith, is by trusting him. Now that obviously makes sense, doesn't it? Because if faith is trust, and trust is gained through experience and through knowledge, then how is God telling you to please him? Say, don't just blindly, by saying you need to have faith, you are automatic. There's a whole body of thought that it comes behind, that comes behind that word. So when says you cannot please God without faith, that means he's saying you cannot please God without A, experience, and B, knowledge of him. Right? This makes sense. You cannot have a friendship with someone if you don't have faith in that person, if you don't trust that person. Trust is one of the foundational things of any relationship. And what do Christians constantly say about God? Is that we need to have a relationship with God. Okay? It's that simple. And you absolutely in no way whatsoever will ever be able to actually have faith, because there are people that walk around, okay, a lot of Christians, right, and we can understand the misunderstanding because there's a lot of stupid Christians out there, okay, where they go around saying, oh, I believe in God, but their lives, right, the Bible says by their fruits you will know them. Their lives demonstrate that they don't actually have any faith whatsoever. None. Because there's no relationship. Because they don't bother garnering the knowledge, they don't study, they don't do their theology, they don't do their philosophy, they don't do anything. They just go to church once a week to tick the box. Look at me, I'm righteous, I gave my tithes and my offerings, or whatever the case might be. Look at me, I'm wonderful. And then they bugger off home, and then they do absolutely squat. In terms of their faith, they go back to a 100% secular life without thinking about religion, their faith at all again. At all. Until the next Saturday or Sunday, depending on what religion you're on. All right, or denomination. Okay, so doubt is actually one of parts of the lower functions of the brain. It's more primitive. Your anxiety, your fight or flight, all these kinds of things. Lower brain functions, part of the amygdala, and it's a little bit more complex than that. So it's no wonder. Because doesn't the secular world love to elevate the indulgence of sex and all those other kinds of pleasures? So obviously they're gonna elevate something like doubt, and the fact that they're elevating something like doubt actually tells you a lot about the philosophy, doesn't it? Right, now, at what point do you doubt? Right, doubt is what happens in spite of what you know. Okay, so there's knowledge. An experience, right? You have your knowledge and your experience. So doubt is what happens when an event causes, when doubt is the process of taking everything, all your knowledge and your experience, okay, and even though you know better, you are still fearful, right? Doubt is like, they talk about fight or flight and stuff like that. It's almost like a fear response that stops you in your tracks, right? Doubt is something that stops you. Skepticism will move you forward, okay? Because skepticism and things like that, skepticism and faith are things that can take this, right, and pull you out of it and move you forward. So skepticism, right, if you find that something is a bit whatever, you can start to question and you can move forward, right, because you're trying to find the truth, and so on and so forth, right? Unless you are the infinite skeptic who is actually not really a skeptic, but is the eternal doubter. Right, and is actually doing nothing but following his feelings and his emotions, right, which is typical of a lot of people. All right, but skepticism properly applied and faith properly applied. So basically, doubt is what happens in spite of your knowledge. It is a dismissal. it is a discounting or a discrediting of your knowledge on your experience, right? Where and which is why people are like encouraging, yeah, you can really do it because you've done it before, or whatever the case might be, right? It's almost an irrational thing. It's not always, okay, because there can be healthy iterations of doubt and stuff like that sort of thing. So for example, when new information comes in and it conflicts with my knowledge and experience, I will experience doubt, right? And that initial experience of doubt is a healthy thing, right? But from that point, I then need to engage on the mode of inquiry to find out between the two, okay? To find out between the two, okay? And the only reason that happens, right, is because the only reason why anything is engaged at all is because it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? If you had no knowledge and no experience whatsoever of anything, then someone could simply tell you something and you'd believe it. Why? Because you've got no frame of reference, okay? These things don't happen in a vacuum, right? These things, trust, faith, doubt, all of these kinds of things don't happen in a vacuum, right? So faith can't be believing where there is no evidence. It's the most idiotic thing in the world, because if you had no frame of reference whatsoever, right? Whatsoever, you would sort of take something on board, right, and maybe buy into it, sort of thing. Oh yeah, I'll kind of go along with that, okay? Because you've got no frame of reference, no nothing, no anything happens within you. Right, but then as soon as something then comes in, right? So you believe, so there's faith and belief. It comes in, and you sort of think, well, yeah, I'll go with that. But then as soon as new information comes in, right, to contradict whatever that person told you before, then you'll have an instance of there's a conflict, okay? That there's a conflict where you'll have doubt. You will have then the process of skepticism, where you will decide between the two, and whichever one you decide between then becomes an act of faith. If you say, I'm going to go with this one and not that one, even though I'm not omniscient and I don't know everything, this is what I can, so faith is only something. So belief and faith are actually very, very, as well, are different things, right? You can believe in something with no evidence, but you can't have faith in something with no. It's impossible. It's literally impossible, right? Which is why Christians and stuff like that who say, I believe this and this and this and that, as soon as they're challenged, right? If there's no substance to it, as soon as they're challenged, they fall apart completely, because there's no substance, there's no knowledge and experience behind that, because all they've done is they've accepted something they've been told. And they're like, well, because I have no prior knowledge or experience, I'll simply accept it. I have no reason to doubt. The doubt signal doesn't come up to alert them, because there's nothing to base it on. They simply accept it, right? And because that little doubt thing goes on, there's no impetus to say to them, listen, maybe you should investigate this. So they'll just buy into it and think, well, maybe that's what it is. And they might think, well, that's maybe all that is, because they haven't heard other alternative views. And then as soon as something else comes in, then there can be a process, right? So doubt is something that where you take, so it can be good, but it can be bad. But doubt is not a virtue. Doubt is only like an alarm signal like fear, right? So don't understand, right? Because even fear, right? Fear is also something that's based on a kind of a knowledge sort of thing. I might hurt on self. It's all of these kinds of things, right? Fear, anxiety, and so forth, right? These things all happen because of variables. Because of variables or unknowns, right? Where you take an unknown and you magnify it, right? Unknown, which is why which is why the atheist community is constantly going on about the humility of what we don't know. It's always, but the answer might be somewhere, right? It's the atheists do the God of the gaps just as much. They do. What's the way to put it? So in the same way that Christians do a God of the gaps, atheists do the possible discovery of the gaps, right? But what if this, and there might be some knowledge somewhere, that maybe, who knows, sort of thing, right? So doubt, fear, anxiety, doubt is part of this whole thing that happens in the face of variables, of unknowns and stuff like that. And the thing is, you can't make a philosophy based on what you don't know, which is what atheists are doing in a lot of ways, right? We can't know this, we can't know that, and there's humility in saying that you don't know, which there is, but to then go on and say that something like doubt is then a virtue, right? It's not at all. It's one of the most stupid things. It's doubt. If you are actually going to raise doubt as the thing to be, you're going to be frozen in time, and you can't do anything. You'll never accept anything because doubt is the alarm bell that goes off when you're faced with an unknown. There's something I don't know and stuff like that. And faith is how you proceed when you intellectually are ready to accept, I know as much as I can, and I have to move forward into the unknown, right? So even the atheist has faith, right? Just like the Christian has faith, because the atheist also will acknowledge they don't know everything, right? But we will go forward believing there is no God because we have a legitimate reason to believe so. But that we have legitimate reasons to believe there is no God. This is what their argument is. And so they're proceeding on faith because they can't absolutely know there is a God, right? So they're moving on faith based on what their knowledge and experience, what that tells them, sort of thing. It's the same thing as Christian. They have faith that there is a God based on whatever knowledge and experience they've had. Okay, and then there's a debate between the two, a skeptical inquiry between the two, to assess the evidence and the experiences and all these kinds of things. But when cornered, right? So when you corner a Christian, they will go to the God of the gaps. Oh, you must just accept, or they're going to blind belief. They don't go into faith. Right? They don't go into faith. They go into this blind belief. And the reason, what's happening there, right? So when doubt comes up, okay, it's an emotional reaction, right, to an unknown. Doubt brings the anxiety, brings the fear. Why? Why would that happen to either a Christian or an atheist? We need to ask this question. Because a lot of us have an ego or a pride or whatever the case might be, where like, if I'm wrong, then I look stupid, I'm discredited. There's a lot of negative emotions that comes along with being demonstrated or proved wrong. Okay, it's a natural thing. So in the same way that the Christian will retreat and into a blind belief that you must just accept, they're doing this because, like they say, there's a cognitive dissonance, there's a discomfort, and they can't deal with the discomfort. So in order to eliminate the doubt that the challenging atheist has instilled in them, right? In order to eliminate that doubt and then the feelings of anxiety and fear that come along with it, they retreat into just a blind belief, okay? Into just like a dismissal. But then atheists are doing the same thing when they try to intellectually elevate doubt as like some kind of a stupid virtue or whatever, right? It's the same thing, right? When a Christian comes with absolute excellent evidence, for, let's say, for example, the resurrection of Christ, the historical evidence for the resurrection of Christ, all of these kinds of things, right? It's solid. Even people, even secular people who are not religious are saying we have the existence and life of Jesus Christ is about as certain as a historical fact as anything can possibly be, right? And many other things. And when an atheist comes into that, right, he then might start to suffer negative emotions, in the sense where I'm going to look stupid if I can't answer. My ego is going to be injured. and when they start doubting themselves or their ability to give a rebuttal or whatever the case might, which is often why either the Christian or the atheist in this particular example will behave in often a hostile manner. So, for example, these atheists that I was talking to basically just accused me of not being sober, accused me of being... They immediately... You know that this is happening because immediately they start attacking you personally, right? The ad hominems come out, right? Oh, you're just an idiot, you're just a fool, you're just this. They start trying to psychoanalyze you. Oh, you're only doing this because... So all ad hominem type of things... and these attempts to psychoanalyze you, because they can't deal with your arguments, they have to try and tear you down as an individual to try and discredit you. And it's like, you're some random stranger on the internet. How could you psychoanalyze the person that you know what I'm saying? And what I usually do in that situation is I say to the person, listen, I will grant you all of that, okay? I will grant you now, and I will even make your case stronger, right? I will grant to you that I'm the devil himself. I am the most narcissistic, horrible person that has ever lived. I'm whatever, okay? I'm absolutely terrible person. I'm whatever. Still doesn't make me wrong. Okay? And so when you do that, you disarm the person. And right, this is useful for atheists as well, because atheists will get Christians who will do the same thing, because we're human, okay? So the whole appeal to the virtue of doubt is the atheist's version of the blind belief of the Christian. It's the exact same thing, right? It's the exact same thing. That blind belief, it's like a comfort blanket, a way to dismiss something that's challenging their worldview, and that's very uncomfortable. Because let me tell you, I've changed my worldview many times. It's uncomfortable as hell. It's not nice. It's not nice at all, especially because it comes with a lot of regrets and a lot of shame, right? Because you think, back then you thought X, Y, and Z actions were good things to do, and then you change your worldview, and then you realize, oh man, that was actually a really bad thing to do. And then you feel the shame and you feel the guilt and stuff like that. And that's often what's behind these kinds of things, this hostility and stuff like that, and this stupidity of elevating things. Let me just close the door. Oops, okay, something fell. And this hostility and all these kinds of things, where people are so at that moment, you know that the person is not searching for the truth. They're merely trying to avoid painful emotions, right? And then the whole expression of elevating doubt as it's like your social justice warriors. Your social justice warriors, and that basically, like, people really on the left with this going and performing in the streets and stuff like that, where they say, don't slut shame. You know, they're constantly going on, you mustn't shame this, you mustn't shame that, you mustn't shame that, you mustn't shame. And whilst it is true that you shouldn't shame people, the reason why they're constantly going on about shame this and shame that and shame that is because they themselves feel shame, right? And they're trying to escape that feeling of shame that is associated with all the things that are going on, and so on and so forth. And it's the same thing with the doubt. The doubt is not a nice feeling. It's actually a pain state. For example, so if you're feeling doubt, if you took like a shot of serotonin, the doubt would go away. Okay. And one of the reasons that you know that doubt is one of the lower functions, one of the primal functions of the human being, because you can tell how much doubt a person will experience in general if you do a personality trait test and go through the big 5 personality traits. You will be able to tell immediately how much doubt a particular person is going to feel. So, for example, someone who's high in neuroticism and low in assertiveness, they're going to suffer doubt all the time, right? They're almost all very, very high. So people that typically of people who are very, very low in confidence, low in assertiveness, and all these kinds of things, and who are high neuroticism. So high neuroticism, high negative emotions. It's easy to make them doubt themselves. It's easy to make them feel shame. It's easy to make them feel anxiety and fear and all these kinds of things. And people like that. And so for excessive doubt, excessive feelings of shame, excessive feelings of guilt, all of these the excesses of these kinds of emotions, to the point where it becomes a disorder. It disorders your life. So by disorder, it means that you in life, you want to have like a proper functioning way whereby you can move forward in life towards certain goals and things like that. And the disorder basically throws up stumbling blocks all the time, so that you're almost frozen. You become stagnant where you are and are unable to move forward because you're so disordered that you keep on tripping over these kinds of things. And doubt is one of those things. And these things, when you see people try to go on hysterically about trying to make things like doubt as a virtue, and promiscuity as a virtue, and like what you see people like these women running around protesting topless, don't slut shame, we want to be able to sleep with whoever, or this very histrionic type of behavior. All these kinds of behaviors are actually to the excess, are actually symptomatic of a personality disorder. All right, essentially speaking, it's people with personality disorders are those types of people, and they will always try to elevate, make these things appear like virtues, because if people can accept these things as virtuous things, right, then it will minimize how much guilt and shame and whatever the case might be that they feel internally. And people with personality disorders generally require rely on their emotional stability and emotional regulation to be regulated from the outside. They can't do it internally themselves. And so that's basically where it is. Now, I honestly don't think... and now here's the thing, when atheists make these objections, I'm not saying that the individual definitely has a personality disorder, whatever the case might be. But the reason why I'm making all these points is because these people clearly aren't thinking about what they're saying, obviously, right? And in a way, they're and this is where the Christian specifically, right? If you're a Christian, have compassion. Okay, we as Christians, we look back on the life of Jesus and see how he didn't get angry very often with people, and even hanging on the cross, he was like, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they're doing. We should have compassion on these people, because when you see these people flip out and carry on in the way like these is typical on the internet, your immediate reaction is to want to get frustrated and angry with the person. But what they're doing is they're actually acting out, and that acting out is a sign that the individual is experiencing negative emotions. Okay? And then you get the whole, doubt is a virtue, and those kind of stupid liberal secular type of philosophies that are trying to elevate things that should never be elevated, sort of thing. It's very and this probably get me into trouble, like those Christians who want to elevate pacifism and stuff like that. There's never any reason to ever get violent with a person. A lot of the times that stems from cowardice. Okay, you're trying to elevate something because there is such thing as just war. Sometimes you have to fight. God smote people. God sent the Israelites in to wipe people out and stuff like that. Pacifism, you will not find pacifism in the Bible, right? And generally, pacifism is not an honest, and if you look at the type of people, and this I may be venturing beyond what is reasonable here, but if you look at the type of people that promote pacifism, you can sort of see, well, no wonder, you you wouldn't do well in a fight, would you? Now, obviously, you need to be as peaceful as possible all the time. Okay, I'm not saying go be a warmonger, because that's another extreme. If you're a warmonger, there's something else wrong with you. Okay, I'm not saying that, but we need to assess these things readily. So to summarize, faith is trust, right? Trust cannot be gained without knowledge and experience. Okay? Doubt is something that arises when new information comes in that conflicts with what you know, which up until that point, you've held that position in faith because you're not omniscient, because you don't know everything, right? Faith is the point where you have to say, I now know all I can and now have to move forward with this, okay? Up to that point, right? Doubt comes up because new information that conflicts, doubt arises. The proper reaction to that is a healthy dose of skepticism, where you try to decide between the two, you evaluate it, and whatever you end up accepting, it doesn't matter whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Buddhist, whether you are an atheist, whether you whenever that conflict is resolved in your mind for you, if you're doing it honestly, if you're doing the proper skeptical path, the skepticism at some point must end. And that's another problem with atheists, right? The skepticism never ends. Okay? Well, until, like most people, they come across something that supports their preferred worldview, which is common for everyone. But the skepticism needs to end. Again, skepticism is not a thing unto itself, right? It's a method. Okay? The skepticism ends, and you have to accept something contingently and move forward. And you do that always, as that is an act of faith. End of story. Right? And if the doubt is and if you are not functioning properly, when the doubt comes up, instead of applying skepticism, you will instead apply self-preservation tactics in order to withdraw from the feelings of doubt and all the negative connotations that are associated with doubt, rather than powering forward, right? Because here's the thing: you have to even skepticism itself doesn't work without faith. Because when you are being skeptical, you are having faith in your ability to resolve the conflict and then move forward, right? Even skepticism itself does not work without faith in the process and in your ability to come out with the truth at the end of that process. Even skepticism. So faith is a virtue. Skepticism is not a virtue. Skepticism is a good thing, right? Skepticism is a good thing. It's a good process, like science is a good process, whatever, the debate is a good process, and sort of thing. But these are not virtues, okay? Faith is a virtue. Because sometimes, right, you have to persevere, because faith is what allows you to persevere in the face of the unknown. Because if you don't, you stay where you are and you stagnate. Here's an illustration that I would like to give that might be helpful. So let's say, for example, you have a bridge, right? So let's say you've got so here's a chasm, okay? Here's a chasm, and you've got some nice water down below. So here's water, right? And then you've got sharks and horrible things down there, right? So it's very deep, dark water. You don't know, there might be a kraken down there or something like that. Okay, all right. So this kraken, this dangerous beast, okay, this dangerous beast that lies in here, the kraken, this is what causes your anxiety, your fear, and your doubt. Over here is where you want to go, right? This I'm going to put G, right? This is your goal, right? This is where you want to end up, okay? Whatever it is, the truth, the whatever. Okay, now every experience, every piece of knowledge, right? So you're going to build a bridge, right? You're going to build a bridge. Okay? Okay? I'm going to build this bridge. Every experience, every piece of knowledge, and so on and so forth is a brick on the bridge. Okay? Is a brick on the bridge. Okay? Now there's one problem with humankind. because we are not omniscient, we will never, ever have all the bricks to cross in order to make a bridge to cross. At some point, you have no choice but to jump. Okay? At some point you have no choice but to jump. No choice, because you're not omniscient and you never will be. You will never know everything. You will never ever, right, have every single brick required to make the bridge. And that jump is faith. Because based on all of that experience and that knowledge, it has taken me in this direction. And it's telling me that this is the right place to go. Right? And this is a rough analogy, but you can have all different kinds of things. Right? So you can find that maybe there is another chasm over here somewhere. Right? Sort of thing over there. Right? Or one over one over here, right? There's water there as well. Sort of thing. Okay, so this all water, whatever the case might be. All right, you might find that as you're building the bridge, it might take you here. So goal. All right, so as you're building the bridge, you might find it might take you there, but then you might find that while you're building the bridge, oh, hang on, it's actually taking me there, or it's taking me over there. Right, the problem with people, right, and I think this is one of the big problems, not only with Christians and with atheists and with basically everyone. Move that, right? One of the problems with people when we're trying to reason through things is rather than build this bridge and see where it takes us, right? We are instead, oh, I want to end up there. Or I want to end up there, and then we're going to try and force fit this bridge to go there, no matter what. Okay? At which point, at some point, when we take the leap of faith, or whatever the case might be, you then find yourself in a situation where you find that you are living life despite what you think you believe, right? Despite where you think the bridge is taking you. You find that when you actually assess your life, you're living in contradiction to what you otherwise think is the case. So, for example, and like as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to speak from a Christian perspective. Atheists constantly want to affirm objective moral values and duties, right? But objective moral values and duties, the atheist worldview does not allow for that to exist. It doesn't allow it. All right? And so when they try to affirm these things, they are then behaving contrary to what their worldview actually says we should expect is in the world. And namely, if atheism is true and there is no God, there's nothing else out there, then everything is purely subjective. Everything is just down here. Then there is nothing telling you or how you should be. And there's no reason why you should be anything, right? Do whatever you want, essentially, right? Philosophers like Nietzsche, they got it right. I think Bertrand Russell as well, they got it right. Right? And some atheists have even gone so far as to say, the reason I reject Christianity is because I don't want to give up my life of sexual debauchery because I like it. At least that person is honest. You know, and one of the problems, because I used to be an atheist, and then I moved through, one of the biggest challenges actually has less to do, I mean, a big part of it is the intellectual stuff, the philosophical stuff. How does this stuff make sense? The science behind it and all that kind of stuff, the historical evidence and stuff. But at the same time, there is a load of things that I don't want to give up if I accept this worldview. And not only do I not want to give them up, but if I do give them up, right, and subscribe to that worldview, and then admit, according to that worldview, that the things I did were wrong, I'm then going to place myself in a position where I'm subject to guilt and shame for the things that I've done. Right? That's what is really going on in the mind. But as any Christian should tell you, there's forgiveness, you can be made new, you can change, turn over a new leaf. It doesn't matter, because we've all been there. Right? It doesn't matter. Okay? So there you are. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that made some sort of sense. And I hope you've stayed up to this point to hear me out and stuff. And again, I'm not writing doctrine, okay? This is what I understand from the psychological literature, from my meditation on it and stuff. This is what I reckon, and I think I have faith that I'm right on this. If you have faith that I'm wrong, go ahead and let me know, okay? And let's have a discussion. A decent one, please. Come on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your viewership. God bless you. Goodbye.